Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another AFL Fantasy Fanatics round review. Post round 3. We're recording live on Sunday, the 30th of March, and the derby's just finished, and Guesty has just got home and didn't think he was going to be on, but he's laid in. So introducing my fellow co-host and AFL Fantasy Fanatic is Tim Guest. Guesty, mate, how are you? Obviously, you were just saying just before we recorded, mate, the game wasn't great. The sun was in your eyes. Probably a bit like a lot of our fantasy weeks. We're probably not quite going to plan.
Yeah. I'm a few drinks deep as well, mate. So got a bit of a buzz going on. It's good.
Oh, beautiful, mate. And we're very excited to have another special guest jumping on with us. First time for the season jumping on with us. Did a head-to-head episode earlier on, but it is DC from HatChat. DC, mate, welcome back to another round review, mate. How are you and how was the weekend?
Yeah, thanks, Wales. G'day, Guesty. Thanks for having me on. Weekend was all right. Probably today not the best on the fantasy front, but more positives than negatives, I think, and ranking's still moving in the right direction. So that's what we want this time of year.
Yeah, exactly. Before I ask you about what you scored and ranked, obviously I spoke to you about this and sent you a message about it, but your boy Riley O'Brien was back doing Tolog things, mate, right in front of me. Obviously got a bit of a laugh from that one.
Yeah, he's a constant source of amusement, is Riley O'Brien, the time laying on ground king that we tend to call him. Just always a joy to watch.
Yeah, exactly. And that was right in front of me. I thought that was hilarious. If you guys haven't seen it, just go to DC's Twitter page and he's shared it. So it's a pretty funny Cherry knocking him over after O'Brien tried to go at him. So quite funny. But anyway, going to the round that was. So DC, how did you score this week? And what was your round rank and your overall rank?
Yeah, so I managed the 1874, which, it was pretty solid. But considering how I was looking Saturday night, I thought it was going to be a fair bit higher than that, but just had the 5 players in that North and Adelaide game, and guys like Dawson and Powell, and then Sherry a little bit underwhelming. So that probably cost me maybe a couple of thousand ranks if they actually get closer to the ton. But I have moved up, and I'm sitting at 1,061. So up about 200 odd spots, I think.
Yeah. Good to be moving in the right direction at least. Guesty, mate, how was your round? How would you score, round rank and overall rank?
Yeah, 1833. Had a win over Sanch in the Content Creators Cup. Look, round rank was 23,568, and I'm now overall sitting at 30,000. So I probably climbed about 4,000 or 5,000 spots or something along those lines. Still, the ranking's looking pretty ugly, but I think the thing that I'm really happy with is I was able to bring in some low. I brought in O'Driscoll this week. Obviously, had a 99, so really good score there. I held Hugo Garcia, so I won 10 from him. Sammy Davidson managed to get his score on the field, 125. So, I feel like my team's in pretty good shape. I've got $637,000 sitting in the bank ready to spend this week. So that's going to go probably straight on top of Xavier Lindsay, and I can go pretty much to the top. I'll have a look at, so not as high as I'd like, but I feel like it kind of really set me up for this next round to come.
Yep. For me, not too bad. 1843. That was a round rank of 19,946, and actually put me inside the 20K. So that's one step ticked off, 18,956. So pretty happy with that, considering I had a Tom Stewart 0 as one of my lowest 4 scores. Didn't have Trainer on field covering him, as I had Reed looped for Roberts. So that was a little bit disappointing, but not too bad nevertheless. And unfortunately, I think I've got a new bogey team in the Content Creators Cup. Went down to Luke again. That's now back-to-back games against Luke I've lost, including the big grand final. So I couldn't get the grand final rematch back, unfortunately there. DC, how'd you go in the Content Creators Cup this week?
Yeah, I was just looking at that as we were talking. I went down to Minimunk, who found some good form in at 1948. So got me pretty comfortably with my 1874.
Yep, he was second highest scorer in the Content Creators Cup with Mitch, 2001. Massive week from Mitch. We thought maybe the demise of Mitch was here, but maybe not. He's back, and I'm sure he'll be buzzing after his boy Tim English outscored Tristan Sherry by a fair bit. So there you go. But Tim, for anyone that hasn't got involved yet, obviously Infinite Wealth doing some good things for the AFL fantasy coaches.
Yeah, I've got that Master Your Money program, online program. It's all about mastering your money and really taking control of your cash flow. Get along to infinitewealth.com.au/AFL Fantasy.
Yeah, beautiful. Quickly, some of the other coaches went over 1900 this week. DT Lemon, 1926, along with Luke, 1925, Louis, 1941. Hef also got a 1911. Obviously, we mentioned Mini Monk with a 1948 there, and obviously Mitch with the 2001. So a few coaches there having good weeks, scoring over 1900. So also, we'll go through our plus threes and minus threes as well. So DC, who gets your plus three and minus three for the week?
Yeah, good question. I think my plus three's got to go to Hugo Garcia. Was not expecting that at all, but I think, funnily enough, he was the player that I was going to trade the week that Bailey Smith was out, and I ended up trading Bailey Smith to Petrarca, so that bit didn't really work, but holding Hugo Garcia definitely did, because I think he was on about 38 points in the first 5 minutes or something. The ball followed him for the start of that game, but he went on with it with the 110, so that's ended up being a really good hold, not necessarily by design, but you take the good with the bad. So really happy with that one. And then, yeah, might give the negative three probably to Petrarca, I guess, as well. Like he's moved Bailey Smith to get him in, thinking that he looked really good that first game, and he's gone 89 and then an 80 in a belting against the Suns. So I've got some concerns here just with how poor Melbourne are looking. I don't know whether he's actually going to get back up over that 100 average if they're getting belted every week. So hopefully they can find some form and he can find some more of the football.
Yeah, well, hopefully he might even be able to get forward status. I don't know exactly what his split was, but he seemed to be playing a fair bit forward on the weekend. So that's probably the hope for owners at this point. But yeah, probably I don't know if you'd be trading into him after what Melbourne are looking like at the moment. Tim, your plus three, minus three?
Yeah, so I'm going to give my plus three to Will Ashcroft, who had a pretty poor start to the season. One of those kind of picks that I thought like an underpriced premium, and I kind of ended up bringing him into the side after Geelong as bye got moved. So yeah, it was good to see him go 115 and play a really good game, and I'm hoping that, well, he's up against the Eagles next week, I think it is. So hoping he'll have another good game there. And then my negative three, I think I got to give this to Jordan Dawson. So what was it, 85 as a captain for me, just kind of really let me down a little bit. I did have the VC on Jack McRae, but I just had no way to get that VC score onto the ground. Well, you know what I mean? No way to take that VC score. So
Matt Roberts.
Sorry?
Do you have Matt Roberts?
Yeah, I did.
You could have used him as the blue dot.
Maybe I could have. Hang on. Anyway, well, I fucked it. Anyway, I didn't get to take it. So that's that one. So yeah, that's I'm still giving Jordan Dawson my negative three for pulling an 85 with the captain on it.
Yeah. I think I'm pretty sure if you had I'm looking here at Guesty's gerbils at the moment, and he's got Matt Roberts sitting there as the buy player. So
maybe you should have just left that one through to the keeper, mate. It made me feel not so bad, but thanks. It's just another mistake I've made this year.
Hey, let's just assume that you were like 113's not quite enough, so you were going for it. So there you go. We'll go with that one there. But yeah, with Dawson, very interesting. That calf was strapped again. I had nightmares of this last year, of these 80s and that. So I'm really hoping this isn't the start of any issues. But also I think it's a bit the mix of that North Melbourne is just not a good matchup for mids anymore. It's just Crouch, I think, got a 50 odd as well. I know Saligo and Rankin both worked pretty well, but I don't think it's going to be as easy moving forward for the mids. So, but yeah, my plus three, I really want to give it to Rankin because he got a 116. He was great on debut, but I have to give it to Sam Davidson. 125 from a rookie. A lot of people, well, I know me and Jake, two of the people I saw that had Sam Wicks finally came in useful for the first 3 rounds. He was able to be looping Sam Davidson on, but a lot of people pivoted to bringing in Corey Warner to take that 125, but he was fantastic on was it Friday night, just everywhere, did what he did against Hawthorn, and I think that he's a guy that we can safely field to F6, especially with Xavier Lindsay going down, which we'll touch on a little bit later as well. -3 for me. Who am I going to give the -3 to? I've got to go Hornbag, like 74. Just no, I know he got a good score, got good last quarter to save that score, but 74 points from a guy that we paid at 90, good early matchups. No Zach Butters. We thought, here we go, probably 100 plus average for the first 3 weeks. And instead, he is averaging 72.7. To put that into context, Zach Reed is almost averaging the same as Horne-Francis. Not that far off, and he outscored him again this week. So, not great start from Horne-Francis there. Hopefully, he can turn it around with Butters potentially back as early as next week. So, cool. We'll get into the games, and we'll start on Thursday night, going back to Essendon and Port Adelaide, with Essendon getting the job done by 12 points, which was very good for the Bombers to get back on track. Christian Morais, DC, 93, was fantastic. Just got the ball and almost had the ball on a string on one of the wings. Has he overtaken Riley Bice now, do you think, is probably the number one rookie downgrade and almost the number one priority to bring in this week?
Yeah, I think so. Just with obviously that 93 now and his rolling average, Bice has looked pretty good. I think he's going to play, but he doesn't have that big pop score in his average, so his price won't go up as quick. What I would say about this game, though, was this was a horrific game of football. Why they decided to put these two teams on the Thursday night, I have no idea. But it was basically just turnover after turnover. There was very few stoppages. I think that particularly the second quarter, the ball just seemed to be going one end to the other, but there was hardly any goals kicked as well. So I think it was kind of the ideal game for a winger, for the outside players. We look at guys like Burgoyne and Dersma turned up as well with the top 2 scorers. So I'd be a little concerned if you're banking on putting him on field as to whether he can do that regularly. But he does look very good. He looks comfortable at the level. It's just we know that with wing roles, they can kind of be feast or famine depending on what's happening in the game.
Yeah, he's got a pretty good matchup to get some of these +6 against St Kilda back at Adelaide Oval next week. Yeah. So the thing I liked about him, he got these +2 like the 1-2-1-2-3s. Like he got like 2-3 like disposals in of change. So that was really positive to see as well. Him getting amongst it there. Kane Farrell, unfortunately, put up a pretty bit of a stinker with a 61. Copped 2 big hits from Sam Draper as well. Teammates burn him a lot. So not a great score from him, but you're holding. He's got the Saints this week, and you're hoping that he can turn it around there. Zach Reed, 83, was very good as well. A lot of people were able to loop him on. Nick Martin, 73, was he could get forward status, or the hope is that that's what he gets, and he's going to be dropping cash anyway, so he's someone to keep an eye on. Also, Jackson Pryett with a 72. Was very good as well. And then, Connor Rosey, just the 84. So a little bit quieter there as well. But we will move to the Friday game because there's not too much from the Thursday game to talk about. But Friday, Bulldogs getting the job done over Carlton by 8 points. And I'm sure that they were probably hoping that they had Matt Kennedy still on their side. But he was very good for the Dogs. Libba, 142. Tim, is the boat passed for a guy like Libba to bring him in now? Obviously, he started very well, averaging like 120 to start the season with a 140. And I know Jake said he wouldn't be shocked if he averaged 110 to start the season. He's definitely doing that. Is he someone you could look at it? He'll be 960, 970 probably when lockout lifts, or do you think it's too late? You've missed the big score and you're looking at other options?
Look, I think a lot of people are going to look at him. And I know there were people considering him early in the year as well, or in the preseason. Look, he's a good pick. He's always one of those players that we kind of disrespect and then ends up, averaging quite well. But I think the problem for me is just his injury risk, like with that concussion. I'm always just a little bit worried about him getting injured. So yeah, I'll probably stay away, but I imagine that he's going to be in consideration for some coaches out there.
Yep, agreed. De Koning continued on his fantastic start to the season, 130 points, another 28 disposals, and he's definitely not the reason that Carlton are struggling. So I think he's playing too well that I'd be not surprised, but he's playing well enough that hopefully Pitney doesn't come back into the side. Sam Davis, as we mentioned, 125 points was fantastic. I think he's going to go up over 100K this week and have like a -30 or something break even. So he's making a truckload of cash. Now, George Hewitt, shout out to a few coaches that picked him to start the year or traded into him. He's been very good. Another 116 there. And Tim English as well was also pretty good with a 99. But DC, Riley Sanders, 73. Joel Fraser, 63. Is there any worry with either of these guys? Obviously, Fraser started a bit better, but got quiet as the game went on. Riley Sanders, opposite, was really quiet. I think 4 points at quarter time, but then really got going with a big second quarter. Is either of these guys for you trade out options? You're probably holding for another week or two to see what they're going to do. Where do you sit with these two dogs?
Yeah, well, I traded Sanders this week, so I think he's definitely a trade out target. He had a much better game, but still only managed the 73, even though he had the 24 disposals. So I've got some concerns about his role, and I don't think it's going to get any better with the reinforcements coming in for the Dogs. Fraser is maybe a slightly different case because we've got very few options that we're super keen on in the defensive line. But kind of similar, I don't really know where he's playing at the moment. And I would say I missed this game, but he seems to be popping in for a few CBAs. Spends a little bit of time at halfback, bit of time wing, bit of time forward, doing a bit of rucking. I think that always makes me nervous because if you get some of those games where they're not playing in the fantasy preferred roles, then they can put up these sorts of scores. So he would have dropped off for a lot of people this week. And I think if we see another week or two of that, then you can maybe think about moving on from him. But I still think Sanders, with some of the other forward options we've got, probably a trade out option if your team's looking pretty good at the moment.
Yeah. Well, he didn't drop off for me. He was my 17th highest scorer. So that just tells you how well I'm going this season. Adam Chera, 83. Started really well. Went a bit quiet in the second half. I just think Carlton at the moment are a bit of a mess. So you're not trading into him. I still don't think you're trading out of him. He's still okay.
Chera's been a long time on the bench. Long time on the bench.
What was his game time? What was his game time in the end?
What have we got? 75%.
Wow. Actually, the fourth lowest for Carlton, discounting the Zach Williams who got subbed out. So, and even if you take out Boyd, only Francis Evans and Fogarty were the only two that play less. And why the hell is Francis Evans playing instead of Lucas Camporelli? I would imagine that gets switched back this week. I think Camporelli comes back in to that Carlton side. He's definitely not the issue for them there. But yeah, Chera, a lot of good time on the bench. I'm sure he'll have a better score in future weeks as well. And last one, Bailey Dale had a bit of a quieter game as well with just the 63 points. Moving over to Saturday, and it was the red-headed players show. It was Matt Rao, Clayton Oliver, and Jake Bowie all dominating in this game. But Gold Coast thumping Melbourne by 58 points here. Matt Rao, fantastic, 129. Noah Anderson, 117. And Touk Miller, 114. Cheeky potential forward status coming for him playing a bit of forward. So he would be a guy we'd be very, very interested in. But I have to go to you, DC, for this guy. Jake Bowie was fantastic. 98 points. He was on, I'm just getting up here. He was on 41 points at quarter time. And as someone that was quite interested in bringing him in this week, I was disappointed I didn't go there. But what did you make of his game? And is it, with the lack of defender options, is it too late to jump on Jake Bowie with the lack of options? Or can we still go there? He's going to be priced at 740-ish K around there. So what are your thoughts with Bowie?
Yeah, I think he's playing some really good footy. He's definitely been one of Melbourne's best over the first three games, but he's probably in a weird way getting an advantage from the fact that they've been so poor, particularly the last 2 weeks, because it has meant that there's a fair bit of ball down there. And he's getting involved in a lot of those chains when they're trying to move it out of D50. So yeah, definitely been stoked with how well that pick's gone. It's probably gone even better than I was hoping. So in terms of whether you can bring him in, I think his price now is getting to the point where you're probably thinking of bringing him in as someone that can get close to matching it with the top of the line. Whereas at his starting price, he was a legitimate cash generator. But if you bring him in now, he's probably going to have gone up about 100K maybe on the season, I'm guessing, by the time lockout lifts. So that's starting to get a little bit of an awkward price. He probably needs to keep going at 90 to then be a really good pick when he's going to be priced, I'm guessing, some sort of in the mid-70s this week. So can he do it? Yes. Am I confident that he's going to do it? Not necessarily. So but as we've said many times this year, there's very few defender options that we're super keen on. So if you like the look of him and want to back him in, I'm not going to talk you out of it, of course, because, he's been one of my best picks this year.
Yep, he was fantastic. And he did that with not very many kick-ins because Stephen May was back, and no surprise to anyone, there was 12 kick-ins for Melbourne. Stephen May had 10, and Salem and Bowie had 1 each. So he is a hog when it comes to...
He does get the mark from the kick in a fair bit, though. He seems to be the guy that is that first kick into play. So that's still a good role for him to have.
Yeah, exactly. Clayton Oliver was very good once again, 108. He's been one of the shining lights, I guess, for Melbourne this year, looking back, getting back to his best. So he was good once again. John No was one I didn't mention as well with a 117. Could be a a guy in the probably closer towards the 800k mark, but probably still just under. Could be someone that you look at in defence with a solid game there. Flanders made his return, scored 89. Petrarca scored an 80. And then Harvey Langford is a rookie to keep an eye on there with a 75. Tim, is Marais for you still ahead, probably with the minus 20 odd break even? Obviously, Langford was someone we talked about in the preseason and looked pretty good in the midfield and one of the other shining lights for Melbourne. Do you still think Marais is the pick with the lower break even?
Yeah, so I think we've got a lot of rookies to choose from this week. So we've got Marais, we've got, Marek, who's probably priced pretty lowly as well.
Nice.
Harvey Langford, who from the preseason, certainly his pedigree looks like a high fantasy scorer. The only problem we've got to figure out is, where does he kind of sit in terms of where does he play? I mean, does Lindsay out now means that he kind of skips the sub and gets that game? So we've just got to, I guess, watch. I'm not sure where Melbourne's playing next week, but that's going to be one thing to watch there. And then the other thing is, what day?
Friday night.
Friday night. Okay, early. Yeah. Okay. So, and then of course Riley Bice. Look, I mean, the thing that I really, I saw a couple of games where he played and he looked like a real player. So I was really keen on bringing in a Bice this week. But the other player I think we've got to think about is currently we've all got a red dot in terms of Harry Boyd sitting in our ruck utility or ruck R3 position. Archer Reed had a bit of a game today, and he's going to get his cash moving as well. So I'm actually wondering whether the strategy might be for me to hold like someone like a Camporelli, because his chances are he's going to play again, and maybe move Harry Boyd as my only red dot and get some cash generation happening there. So look, there's a lot of rookies for people to consider this week, and I'm not entirely sure how that's going to fall. So that'll be what we'll be looking at this week.
Yeah, exactly. Langford did have the third most CBAs behind Clayton Oliver and Jack Viner, who had 21 each, and then Langford had 16, Petrarca had 15. So it'd be a watcher to see how he goes moving forward. Dan Rioli, 63. He was also disappointing. A lot of these defenders that people went for this week either went 60 or over 110. So, hopefully you guys didn't go for a Dan Rioli. And then, obviously the big unfortunate one from this one was Xavier Lindsay, but we do have some positive news on that. So no ACL, apparently had an MCL sprain, and they're saying that he's unlikely to play against Geelong on Friday night, but they aren't ruling him out really further than that. So DC, obviously we don't know what his break-even will be, obviously makes a bit of cash. Is he someone that we could look at holding and putting on the bench and playing a Marais or a Finn O'Sullivan or a Lawler or Langford for a couple of weeks and holding him there and keeping him in our teams for when he comes back?
Yeah, I think so. Probably with someone at that sort of price, we know he's still got a lot of cash to make. He's still going to be priced well under 500k. So that will obviously slow his scoring, but he's looked well and truly good enough to be at the level. And if he's only going to miss the 1 week, maybe two, you just move him to the bench, particularly with the best 18, and then you can pop him back in. So I think obviously some people say, yeah, but you traded Bailey Smith a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, I did. It probably didn't work out quite as well as I was hoping it was going to be, but that was probably more the player I went to and the fact that he only missed 1 week. I think in this case, if there is a chance that he only misses 1 week, which sounds though it could be, a player that cheap, just hold, and then you can move him back in the week after.
Yeah. And if people watching that game as well, he's playing off half back and got 2+6s very, very early. No joke. I literally tweeted out Xavier Lindsay off half back, the eyes emoji. And about 10 seconds later, he went down with the injury. You better believe I deleted that tweet very, very quickly. So I didn't. New people would probably try and blame me. So it was not me. Don't blame me. Cool. Move on to St Kilda and Richmond. St Kilda getting a big win by 82 points over the Tigers, and a few good scores once again with St Kilda having 5 players going over 110, with Jack Sinclair leading the way with a career high 40 touches and 134. Ryan Marshall 123, Jack McRae with a 113, Nasai with a 112, and Hugo Garcia with a 110. DC, obviously you said you held on to him, and a lot of people did. There were a lot of people out there actually that benched Garcia, obviously, to take Davidson's score. So obviously that was looking pretty good on Friday night. And then Hugo Garcia was pretty good and nearly got there. No Jack Steele. That was probably the big thing as why his role was so good. Can we jump straight back on him for the people that jumped off of him? Or do you think that we wait a week, see what he's like with Jack Steele in the team against Port as well, Adelaide Oval, and if he has the same role or plays well again, then we can jump on the following week? What do you reckon?
Yeah, I could kind of get behind either move, to be honest. I think he was very, very good. He was, not only did he score well, he was one of their best players. I think he adds a a little bit of extra pace through their midfield, which I quite like. Obviously, still miss. It sounds like that's not going to be a long-term thing. So I think that probably does affect him a little bit when he comes back in. But he still had the pretty low time on ground. His points per minute were through the roof. I do think it means that his risk of getting the sub vest is pretty low now. After that performance, he's shown that he's more than good enough to play as a midfielder for AFL level. But yeah, obviously the Port matchup this week, not necessarily going to be great for him. So I don't think it's a must get this week, but I still think he's a pretty good option now that his price is moving in the right direction.
Yeah, exactly. 110 points from 66% time on ground is fantastic and very, very good. Jaiden Short 101 was also good. Camden McIntosh, shout out to anyone that started with him. He's been a pretty decent pick. Another ton for him. And if you've got him, you're definitely riding his cash. And if you don't have him, we have missed the boat, unfortunately. But he has been very good. Max Hall was also very good, 89. Unfortunately, Jordox, Taranto, let him down again, along with Sam Wells. So Jordox is definitely not liking these mid-premiums for the year. Trainer had a 78, was also very, very good there. Travalia, 63, was pretty solid on his debut, obviously the late in. And then Sam Lawler with a 46 was a bit quiet, played a bit more forward in this game. And Angus Hasty came on as a sub in the second quarter because... what was his name? Mansell pushed O'Connell into the contest and O'Connell getting knocked out. So that was unfortunate for O'Connell, and Hasty couldn't really make much use of coming on early as a sub, and I dare say he might not even be there next week because he didn't have too much impact. That's it from that game. We'll move on to Hawthorn and GWS. Good game, this one. Obviously, the wind blowing the ball in all directions here, but Hawthorn coming from behind after a poor start, 12-point winners there. Lockie Whitfield dominating 120 points. If you jumped on him, you'd be very, very happy with that score. Himmelberg 106 and Ash 100. So the main three scorers, all the halfbacks for the Giants. Tom Green 91 with 22 handballs. We'd prefer him kicking it a bit more, but he's someone that will come down a bit in price. Will Day scored an 83. It was crazy. He wasn't having a heavy tag on in the first half and could have been a lot different if he kicked straight. 1 goal, 3 in the first half, but quiet down a little bit. But 83, not bad. Tim, for people that have still got Will Day, the fact you've had that score, 83, you've had the Giants tag, are you holding through his buy now?
I'm going to use Mini Monk's phrase and say team dependent. I mean, depending on what bullets you've got at the state of your team, I mean, you could potentially trade him with the buy, but chances are if you've held him this far, I think most coaches are probably going to hold. I think he's got a couple more games, well, by this week, but then a couple more games and he enters a pretty soft run. So maybe just hold on to him and start to get the benefit there.
Yep, I agree. Then we had some other lower scores here. So Connor Stone, 68, was pretty good. Had his best game of the season, so his cash gen will be moving in the right direction, which is good. Dylan Moore was quite 67. Definitely not the game for him. He's obviously got his bye, then Port Adelaide, but then comes into a very, very nice few weeks after that, and he's going to be sub 800k for us. So he's someone potentially to be looking at in the forward line. But I feel like we've got a fair few forward options at the moment in our team, so maybe we might not be able to fit him in there. Sisley was quite as well with the 63, and then Finn Callahan, 57. But I think the big story from this is that McGuinness went to him, so we might have Finn McGuinness tagging, which is very interesting to see what happens. And they've got Port in gather round. Who have Hawthorn got next week, actually? So Hawthorn have got the bye. So, yeah, they got Port day after their bye. So maybe Rosie or Butters or even Horn Francis could cop some attention if they go to tagging there. And then Sam Taylor also got a 60 for anyone that's still got him. Unfortunately, I'm one of those coaches. Moving to the other Saturday night game, not as rainy as what we thought it was, but Brisbane getting the job done by 9 points over Geelong. And the big thing from this one was carnage before the game, and it should not shock us at all with Geelong doing their usual tricks and having some laid outs in Tom Stewart, who I thought he wasn't going to, I didn't think he was going to play. I had a feeling he was going to be rested. But the big one was Mitch Nevitt was the sub. So don't think a lot of us saw that coming, but also at the same time doesn't surprise us with Geelong. DC, do you have Mitch Nevitt in your side?
No, it was actually my trade target this week. Probably until we had Sam Davidson's pop score. So I ended up bringing in Corey Warner to be able to take that, which, yeah, I'm glad I did because, Nevitt definitely wasn't the trade-in target. And probably if I didn't do that, probably wouldn't have had a great week. I might have slipped in the rankings. So sometimes you just got to chase the points, I think. And obviously it's a little bit different to bring in a red dot when we know his cash gen is going to be there from next week on with it still.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, disappointing for Nevid owners because I think he's been really good, but just means that probably not quite as much security there as what we thought.
Yeah, for the people that got locked into it, so I know Tim also had the same. He pivoted off Never and brought in Corey Warner to take Davidson Saw. For the people that got locked in or obviously started a Never and have got him there, what do they do? Like he plays Friday, so we'll know with sub. But is it just a case of that the fact he's been given the green vest that you just got to jump off, or do you think if he's not the sub that if you've got other issues you keep him there and hope he can put up a big score and keep that cash gen going, because obviously his break even will shoot back up?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I think probably depends on what other issues you've got going on in your team. But because he is playing early in the round, as you said, you can have a look. So maybe hold your trades over until the Friday night and then make your decision then. But I think if you have to hold him and he's not named as sub, he's shown that he can be a pretty good scorer. So I'd be okay with holding in that situation. But if it's your biggest issue and you want to jump off, then I wouldn't talk you out of it either.
Yeah. McCluggage top scored though with his or human luggage, as I know DC and the HatChat boys like to say. 121, he was very good and very up and down with this Brisbane midfield. Very interesting with some of these scores. Zorko 119 along with Max Holmes as well. So both those guys getting up good scores, and Zorko owners were probably a bit nervous heading towards half time, but he really got going and had a good score, and he's playing very, very well. Will Ashcroft, Tim, 115. You've still got, you gave your +3 to Will Ashcroft. What do you think about him as an option for people to bring in? They've got Richmond now this week, and then they have a very nice run after that. So they've got like the Bulldogs, and they've got Collingwood, and then they've got St Kilda. Is he a guy that people can bring in, or do you think that just
I think you want to see a little bit more from him first. His first few weeks have been pretty disappointing. And I felt like he's just not got that bump in the CBAs that we thought he was going to be getting this year. So, yeah, I wouldn't be moving to him just yet. Maybe watch him for another week. But, if he starts to perform, then, yeah, look, he could be someone you look at getting on.
Yeah.
It is worth pointing out that Neil got a pretty heavy tag in this game as well. So I think they moved him out of the CBAs a little bit, and Ashcroft was probably the beneficiary of that, coming in for the second most for any of the Brisbane mids.
Yeah, I'm just having a look here. So for the day, there was 23 CBAs. Dunkley had 20. Ashcroft had 17. McCluggage 15. Then Neil, as you say, DC had just the 13. So, yeah, could be switched around. But, yeah, Will Ashcroft, very good score from him. Bailey Smith returned and was very good. He got it done with tackles this week and scored 112, going along nicely, along with Myers, who went 112. Dunkley, 110, just continues to get it done. And then Lockie Neal, DCs, obviously with the Tigers coming up, and the good run I just mentioned with Will Ashcroft, he's in the mid-900s. Is it just a worry that he's the main tag target and you just don't want to jump on him because teams are going to put someone on there? Or do you think with this good run, mid-900s, there's a case that you could jump on?
I think you could. But, yeah, those sort of guys always make me really nervous when you know that there's such an obvious tag target. And he's obviously shown already this season that he can be susceptible to a really low one when the clamps are put on him. So probably not one I'd necessarily look at, but he's one that you probably keep an eye on to see if he gets even cheaper. But yeah, 950 is not super, super cheap. If he gets into the 800s, maybe I'd think about it. Yeah, I like it. De Koning was the sub out. So that was the other thing that from Geelong, doing two Geelong things, 66. So a bit like Fraser, his cash is beginning to halt a little bit. And with Melbourne up this week and Max gone, you sort of wonder maybe is this the week that Stanley does come into the side. So a watch for De Koning owners there. Levi Ashcroft got a 58, was okay. And a few other rookies, O'Sullivan 47, Closey 44. Both of them were a bit quiet, so not quite getting the job done there. Moving on to the two games from the Sunday. But before we do, this podcast obviously is sponsored by Infinite Wealth, but also along with that, our good friends at Game Day Squad have jumped on with us for the season as well. So another fantasy platform that's focused a lot more on the weekly side of things. A lot of cash prizes going around. Don't have to pay to play. So if you guys haven't signed up yet, use the code BAILSDT at sign up and you get 3 free packs worth $21 right at sign up and get you started, gets the club moving in the right direction. And if you love fantasy as much as I do and you want to get on another platform, then head over to gamedaysquad.com.au
and sign up using the code BAILSDT. Right, moving to the first game on the Sunday with the Crows getting another win. Very, very happy Crows fan here, and wearing the T-shirt right now with Lairdy on it for the GOAT's 250th game today. He was very, very good with 108 points. Isaac Rankin, though, DC, 116. Obviously, I brought him in this week. I think looking like a top 6 forward as it stands. We might have a few guys that get DPP, like a Toot Miller, Chad Warner, guys like that, but Rankin, what do you think about bringing, if people that don't have him already, bringing him in potentially as early as this week?
Yeah, I think he's a really good option. I think he's looked fantastic in all 3 of his games, really. If he didn't get subbed out in that second game, he was probably on track for about a ton there as well. So, yeah, if you have liked the look of him, you need to move someone out of your forward line, and you've got some cash to burn, then I think he's still a really good option. I think he's going to be a top 6 forward this year, and we're going to want him at some point.
Yeah, I think that you obviously talked about Sanders being a bit of a trade-out option. So I dare say Sanders up to Rankin would feel like a pretty nice upgrade for anyone that's got a little bit of cash in the bank. A couple other forwards that scored well for us. Josh Simpkin, 117. Very, very good to start the season. So he's someone we've probably got to keep in mind as well. Caleb Daniel, 115, just absolutely dominating off halfback like we thought that he would. And Saligo, 115. I didn't think that this would keep going, but it's another big score from him. If you went him over a Callahan and a Tom Powell, then you'd be pretty happy with that score there. Harry Sheasel, 90 points. He's just the most annoying player to not own. Like, he was on track for a poor score, and he goes, I'm going to go to halfback and rack up some ball. And he did, and had a really good last quarter, but he's just an absolute gun, and we're going to want him at some point. But Sydney this week, maybe a James Jordan. Does he go towards him? I wonder if it's him or LDU. That'll be what I'll be watching for. Jordan Dawson, I'm slightly concerned. 85. I'm hoping this is a bit of a matchup, but calf was strapped pre-game. Didn't really look like getting out of second gear in here, but was that because of this little calf niggle? I'm not sure. Tim, is it obviously we're holding, right? We're all on. I think we're all 3 of us here have got Dawson. It's just a hold for you, but is this a bit concerning, or what are you thinking with Dawson moving forward?
Yeah, so look, I think he was clearly impacted by that calf strapping, but at the same time, he still had 86% game time. So I kind of think if it was too much to worry about, they probably would have rested him a little bit more. So I guess just hold and fingers crossed that he comes good.
Yeah, and the positive thing for him as well, he had the most CBAs for the Crows. He had 27 of the Crows, 33 CBAs. Rankin, Saligo were next with 23. Crouch with 20 with 62% game time, which is interesting. And then Peatling was right down. So it looks like the Crows have really sort of settled on a pretty tight 4-man midfield at the moment, with Peatling and your Drapers maybe coming in for a few CBAs as the game goes on there. Tristan Sherry definitely sent a scare through a lot of us in this game. Grabbed at the hamstring, went off, came back on and grabbed his hamstring a couple of times after that, but looked better and ran the game out. Rested, I think, the final 7 or 8 minutes on the bench. So just keep an eye on news or anything like that. But the fact that he was able to run out most of the game, I think is a positive sign, but you just never know with these sort of things. Hopefully he's okay. Tom Power, 72, bit quieter in this game. Obviously, DC, I know that you're an owner and someone that started him, and obviously a very good starting pick. Was this just a bit of a tougher matchup, you think, and he'll be right moving forward?
Yeah, pretty much. I think the tough matchup, and it was a bit of an odd game as well. Like, there wasn't much ball that really went through the middle. There's a lot of ball out in the wings, and we know that Tom Power and probably guys like Dawson are really good at popping up for those little short 45 kicks inside. So I didn't see too much of that in this game. And a lot of that was because of how well Adelaide sort of blocked the corridor off and pushed north wide. So I would expect that he will bounce back, and I'd expect Dawson will bounce back as well. It was just a bit of a strange game. And I think particularly that third quarter that Power was really quiet in, he was on the ground for probably the first 10 minutes of the quarter, and there was a whole heap of set shots, which means that the ball's obviously in one player's hand. It takes time out of the game and means that no one's scoring. So it was a pretty low-scoring quarter, that one, I think. But then he actually went off, and then the game opened up there for about 10 minutes, and then he couldn't get back on. So sometimes you just get a bit of bad luck like that in game, and that was probably almost the difference between him sort of getting another 85, 90 and having another solid game and setting it up with a 72.
Yeah. For the people that don't have him, do you still think he's a pretty good trade-in target?
I think you're starting to probably get to the point where he's getting a little pricey. You've really got to hope that he can go well over 100 now if you bring him in. So I think start to look for the next guy. If you really wanted him, you probably would have got him after week 1. So 3 rounds in now, 3 price rises. I think it's probably time to start looking at other options.
Yep. I think I probably agree as well. And then Finn O'Sullivan had a better game this week, 52. Still doesn't have that thirst that the Sheezels and the McKerches have back there, but it was good to see him a little bit busier and make a little bit of cash and move in the right direction. Again, played full-time defence. He's going to get defensive status when the DPPs roll out, so that could be handy for some flexibility. So I think a lot of us are still holding him on our benches. Moving to the final game being the Western Derby, with Frere getting the job done by 38 points. And Tim, obviously you were at this game. The guy I need to ask you about, this guy was on our radar in the preseason. I heard Jep obviously talking about this obviously him and Taser going down, seeing a lot of training. Ryan Marrick, 101 points. Just having a look at the kick-ins. He had 9 kick-ins and played on from all 9. And then you had a couple of other guys have some, but McGovern was injured. I didn't actually see what happened from here. But Ryan Marrick, what do you reckon about him as a trade-in option, and would you have him over Garcia?
Thing that I think we've got to worry about is he's going to be getting up there in price. So what's...
He'll still be under 500k.
Yeah.
Very cheap.
I mean, look, I think it's going to come down to Gov's injury. So Gov had a head knock, went off. Once again, I think Gov only played like about 60% of the game or something like that. So
I think they were saying groin injury on the
yeah, okay. So, yeah. So look, I think it's going to depend a lot on him. If Gov's out, then I think Marrick is certainly going to be something to consider. The thing that concerns me is just a bit up there at price. It just seems like it might be a little bit sidewaysy. So yeah, something to consider for coaches this week.
I absolutely love it, to be honest. I think it's a really good option. If you're looking to upgrade somewhere else and you can do a Sanders down to Marrick, it looks like he's got a fair chunk of the kick-ins. If Gov misses a couple of weeks, I think he's going to get all of those. The only thing I would say in this game was that Freo were pretty inaccurate. So they did get the opportunity to take those kick-ins a fair bit, but at that sort of price, he's going to be priced, around 50 maybe. If he can go at 75, 80 for a few weeks, that's a pretty good pick. So if you're looking for a forward downgrade, he's one I'd be considering for sure.
Yeah, he's going to be high on my list, I think. 492k break even of 4, and he scored a 74 against Brisbane the week before, and even had 31 points against the Gold Coast in just over a quarter. So the scoring does look like it is there, and won't get defensive status because he's already mid-forward, but he will be someone I think we're definitely going to be watching. But Brayshaw, Sarong, both tonned up. This definitely... Justin Longmuir not helping out the fantasy coaches, resting Brayshaw and Sarong a fair bit in that quarter, particularly at the end, and not having big scores. But Brayshaw 110 was good, and Nathan O'Driscoll with a 99 has been a great pick there. And I know a few people that pivoted from a Nevitt to a nod, and they'd be very, very happy with that. Tim, is it too late for a nod? Like, he'll be pretty much on around 600k mark. Is it too late for him at that 600k now?
Oh, look, I mean, once again, he's probably got a player that's got a bit of price in him. Like, I mean, he probably could go around about the 80 mark, so that's still a good 20 points in him. Yeah, look, it's getting hard though. It's getting to the point. It also depends how much he's going to go up this week, right? So he's going to go up a fair bit this week. Break even of 10. He's probably going to be 650 or something along those lines. So
his price says already what it is. So I think it's 596 or something. I think.
Oh, is lockout open? Is it?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, look, I think it's going to be one that's kind of on the fence, right? Like there's some points in there, but it's but you're starting to pay up a fair bit.
Yeah, I think if you want to do Sanders to O'Driscoll in your midfield, I think a few people might have gone to get Rankin from Day, put a forward into their mids. If you've got that, I think Day to O'Driscoll could be a play. But obviously, also Marrick is there for 100k cheaper. So just something to keep in mind, and could be someone to look at there. And then the other one was pretty impressive. Murphy Reid, 75. He's been a pretty solid pick for anyone that started with him. Obviously, round 1, he had that 56 points third quarter and kicked 4 goals. But besides that, he's been very good and making good cash. So you'd be very happy. But just quickly on Brayshaw, DC. Obviously, had a quiet start to the season, 110. This could have been a lot bigger. Had just the 1 mark here as well. Is he I didn't watch this game. I'm sure that you did. Is he someone that has dropped a bit in price, could be potential target. They've got some pretty good matchups on the horizon.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for a premium mid, I don't really know who you'd go from to move to a premium mid, but yeah, I think he's as good as an option as any. Obviously missed a bit of a pop score there from him, but we know he's got a really good ceiling on his day. They've got Richmond in a couple of weeks, I think Dogs maybe next week. So a couple of pretty nice matchups. So I'd expect that he's going to be there or thereabouts with the top eight mids this year. So if you want to jump on him, then now's probably as good a time as ever.
Yep, I don't mind it. I was pretty keen on him in the pre-season. Just moving to some listener questions. We got through all of the games, so we'll go through some of these here. A few people saying, where's the delete team button? Just getting injury after injury. IT was one that said that there. Just hang in there, mate. We'll keep pushing through. As I know Roy likes to say, keep bending the bottom mouse and keep moving forward. So we got Sean was saying, yeah, Marek or Garcia in. So I think so. DC, you'd probably say, would you be going? Obviously, you own Garcia. If you had to pick one of them, is it Marek?
Yeah, it's a tough question. Probably Marek, just with I think a little bit more security in that role, particularly if McGuffin misses. If there's any news that he's going to miss a few weeks, I do think Marek's an option.
Yep. That Bulldog guy won, Tim. He's saying he's training JHF and Lindsay. Obviously, we said probably not Lindsay, but what about JHF? Obviously, he's been poor to start the season, 3 games. Is it just a case of he's going to be probably around the top 6 forwards? He's going to have better scores. Do we just hold the faith and keep him there, or is there an argument to be made that he can go to Marek or go to someone, make some cash and restructure somewhere?
Well, I mean, let's just look at the question you asked, right? Like you said, he's going to be a top 6 forward. I mean, we kind of thought that was a lock, but I guess the question we've got now is he? He's had Butters out.
These other guys get forward status as well, like a Toot, Chad Warner, guys like that.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be dropping in cash a fair amount as well, like break even at 112 this week. He's already dropped from about he's already dropped 60 odd grand or something along those lines, and at the moment he's averaging 73. So, it's going to be a question that I'm going to be asking myself this week as well, as whether he's someone that could look at going. But yeah, I'm not sure yet. DC, what do you think, mate?
Yeah, I think for me, you've got to hold him because he's now dropped quite substantially. He's down at 840. That's probably going to price him in the low 80s, I would have thought. So I think there's actually some upside there now. If you trade him out now, then you're kind of locking in those bad scores. And the other thing with the two really all 3 of his games, for round 1, he was tagged, obviously, by Perryman to an 82. You kind of take that from the forward, really, most weeks. That's not great, but it's okay. The 62 against the Tigers, he played full forward most of the game, which we obviously weren't expecting. And then this week, he just had an absolute mare. Like, it was a horrific game of football from him.
He dropped like 4 marks.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Like, probably until the last quarter. He was pretty good in the last quarter and saved his score. And I think both him and Rosie, I think, might have got a bit of a rocket from Ken at 3/4 time because they were, both of them, pretty poor in this game. But, yeah, as you said, Bales, like, he dropped 2 blatantly obvious easy chest marks. He fumbled the ball about half a dozen times on the ground where he could have picked it up and handballed. So another day when he's actually on it, that's quite easily, I think, probably a 90 plus, and then we're not even talking about him. So I just think it was a really bad game. He's too good a player to do that too consistently, though. So as painful as it was, hold him, and I think he bounces back in the next few weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, if anyone was watching the watch song, dare say that there was some colourful language used when he dropped that. There was a mark in the forward 50 that he dropped, and it was, oh my God.
It was about 2 or 3, I reckon, for the game that were just absolute sitters that he dropped, which he would never usually do. So it was very weird.
Exactly. Condolences for Carl Newsom, who he says brought in Lindsay and Nevitt this week, and he captained Cherry. So, yeah, sorry, mate. That's a tough week, and hopefully have a bounce back this coming week. Adam Smith, they're saying short term for Lindsay. Yes, they are looking like a maybe 1 to 2 week injury. I think we're probably holding. He's got too good a role. Looks like they're going to be playing him at half back. And we had Dylan Alexander on the preseason saying if he goes to half back, he could be like a Sheezer or a Dacos rookie type year player, averaging somewhere in the 80s or even go somewhere even a little bit higher. So just something to be looking at. Tim, Nuggets got this question. More important to bring in a defender like Zorko, Whitfield or Holmes, or a forward like Rankin or Simpkin?
I think forward. So I think Rankin's the player to be looking at this week. Obviously, was sub last week, only played, what was it, about 60% game time, scored an 80. So it kind of kept his BE down as well. I think he's definitely going to be a top 60. In fact, he might even be pushing up there for the top one. I mean, although Caleb Daniel and Jack McRae certainly put their hand up at the moment. So yeah, I think Rankin's a good player to be getting on.
Yeah, agreed. Henry V watching
defender options as well.
What was that? Sorry,
I don't think there's much value in those defender options as well.
Yeah, exactly. And you bring in probably in like an Asira or a Sinclair this week to get the Richmond matchup. So I think they got Port Adelaide, then GWS. So a couple of trickier games. And Henry V was saying here, watching Sinclair and Garcia go huge after trading Garcia and getting Nasai was fun. Yes, DC definitely knows how I was feeling after the first quarter with the big difference between the two. But it wasn't too bad in the end. And I dare say maybe teams in future weeks going to be maybe looking at Sinclair and looking at tagging him because he was everywhere in that game. Samois is saying, is Sarong still an issue? At this stage, he's got a decent run. Dogs next week at home. DC, what are your thoughts with talk about Brayshaw? What about a Caleb Sarong for people that have either got him or potential trade-in option?
If you've got him, you hold him. If you don't have him, I still think there's probably better options. I think we got enough evidence in the back half of last year that he needs a lot of the ball to score really well in the roles he's playing in that midfield. And I still think he's the number one tag target as well. So I'd probably look elsewhere.
Yep. Sneeko, Tim, and I'm actually keen to hear your thoughts on this one, DC, as well. He says, so many issues in my team. I've got Joel Frazier, SDK, Mitch Nevitt, Lindsay, Horn-Francis, and Sanders. What do we do and how do we prioritise them? So, Tim, how would you sort of prioritise those guys and rank them as out? So, obviously, start with, I guess, Frazier and SDK, and then we'll work our way down.
Yeah, I'm not too bothered about Frazier and SDK at the moment. I was kind of banking that SDK's average might be around about the 80 mark. He's priced just under 700 at the moment, which puts him at price just maybe about 71, 72, something along those lines. He's also very highly owned. Frazier, look, once again, he's had a pretty stellar start to the season, averaging 80. I tend to think that maybe just wasn't a great game for him, and he'll probably bounce back from that. So once again, I'm not really looking at moving those two players. I think I've got bigger issues in my side, like we were talking about a Sanders before, or even there'll be some coaches that probably look at jumping off Lindsay as well. So who are the other players that you mentioned?
You got, Nevitt, Lindsay. I think we said Lindsay's probably a hold at this point because he's going to be back within maybe a week, potentially two, worst case. Then you got Nevitt, Horn-Francis, Sanders. And we probably said Horn-Francis is looking at. So is it Nevitt and Sanders are probably the guys for you that you'd be looking at moving?
I wouldn't be so quick to jump off Nevitt as well. I tended to wonder whether Geelong was doing a little bit of management as well, maybe with Nevitt. it's a bit early in the season, but he seemed pretty locked into that midfield mix. So, yeah, it was a bit of a shock for me to see him as the sub. And I'd be interested to see what sort of role he plays this week. I don't know that he's kind of been pushed out of that best 22 just yet. I tend to wonder whether it was just a this week kind of issue. So, yeah, look, the other thing is I'm not sure what he's priced at now as well. He was, once again, around about that kind of 50 mark. So I still saw plenty of upside. In fact, I saw more upside in him than I saw in an O'Driscoll. So I wouldn't be so quick to be moving off Nevitt, although his cash gen has stalled a little bit, though.
Yeah. DC, where would be your priorities in terms of the players we mentioned there?
Yeah, I think Sanders and then probably Nevitt. I agree. We don't move Lindsay for the moment. As I already said, we don't move Horn-Francis. Actually, probably maybe SCK is the other one that I'd think about moving. I think there's some signs there that maybe that train's going to stop soon. And I think if they bring in Stanley this week to try and combat Gawn as well, then that's a bit of a concern because if he moves to that tall defender role, we know he can drop 40s and 50s there. So you could probably get away with maybe one more week with best 18 if you've got other issues, but then I think it's going to start possibly becoming an issue when we've got some uncertainty around the role once we get back to best 22.
Yeah. So obviously Sanders is obviously a guy, obviously you moved and people looking at moving on. Is he obviously he got a 73, which is fine. He got 60 on the week before, which they're just middling scores. And I guess we can be having rookie scores that essentially count for this. Like Lawler had a pretty poor game and he still didn't score that much less than a Sanders. Is he, I know a lot of people, he's probably like the guy like a Tom Phillips, right? Like just sort of sits in our team getting 70s and got you just keep kicking the can down the road. Is he a guy that you'd almost have at the top of the list and you'd prefer to go like a rookie down and him up to someone, or even him down and go someone else up on the other end?
Yeah, I think I'd have him and SDK around the same sort of mark. I mean, you look at the forward line this week, and Bailey Smith's around the same price. Obviously, a lot better. Davidson did really well, huge score, outscored him by 50 odd points. Garcia's cheaper than him as well, outscored him. Even someone like a Connor Stone with his, I think he had a 68. Like, that's not really, you can have him on field with that sort of score instead of Sanders. So, 70s don't kill you, but they're not really helping your team either. So, I think if you can go to a player that's going up in price and is going to be, or a player like Rankin that's going to be a keeper in your team long term, then that's a pretty good move in my book. Yeah.
Beautiful. We'll move. We'll just have these last couple of questions here, a couple of super chats. I've got one other question here. So we'll finish off with these and we'll wrap up tonight. So Tim Ashworth's got a super chat. So thank you very much, mate. He says, do I trade Taylor to Rankin or get a defender or mid and Lindsay to Marais with 256K in the bank? So I think obviously we said Lindsay's a hold. Tim, obviously, I think we're all ticking off Taylor to Rankin. I think it's a great trade. Obviously, if he can make it work, you'd be going another rookie to Marais and going Taylor to Rankin. I'm assuming that's what you'd be doing.
I think you got to get away from Taylor. Like, you brought him in, you weren't really looking to hold him this long. It'd be, I think it'd be nice to see the back of him. And Rankin's a very good pick.
Yep, exactly. I've still got bloody Sam Taylor in my team, and you may even have to stay this week if I'm getting a Ryan Marrick in. So who knows what's going to happen with him.
I'd really like that move, like what DC was talking about, like maybe a Sanders to a Marrick. I mean, one of the things that I guess that I'm wondering about with all these rookies that are available this week, it's kind of which one do you pick? So I kind of almost don't mind waiting another week to see, how they go, especially if you can bring a Marrick in, because, chances are he's going to score those points as well as get the price rise over the next couple of weeks. Gov is out with a bit of a groin.
Yeah, and he's got a single-digit break even as well. Marrick does, and the thing Riley Bice, I think is a good option, right? We know he's got a negative break even, but the Sydney do have a fair few players that were listed as 1 to 2 weeks last week that potentially could come back. So you got Callum Mills was 1 to 2 weeks. He could be back next week. Melican was 1 to 2 weeks. McInerney suspension comes back in round 6. Logan McDonald was a week away. Robbie Fox will be 1 to 2 weeks next week. Harry Cunningham could come back, and then Taylor Adams is 1 to 2 weeks. So whether all these guys come back in the team, whatever, but it sort of just makes me a little bit nervous about a Bice. And if you can only get one, I think Marais is the guy, and maybe a Marrick is better option. You wait a week on a Bice. That could be something to be watching, but one to watch with what Sydney do with their team. Let's take a super chat here from Exceptions. Thanks, mate. Appreciate it. Stay on Finn Callahan, DC. What are your thoughts with Finn Callahan? He goes into the Eagles this week, and I think that their run looks pretty good over the next months. Do you just put that down to the Finn tag and you'd be holding?
Yeah, I think you just answered the question. He's got the Eagles this week. No way I'd be trading him. But I think longer term, that probably was my concern with him, that he can get a fair bit of the ball in certain games, but he doesn't seem to get the tackles or marks around the ground. I do think he's probably going to end up being a better player in real life than in fantasy. So, would hold him this week, but I don't think he's necessarily going to be a long-term keeper for you.
I would agree. Final one, just wanted to touch on, because someone just mentioned a name we didn't actually touch on in the games, was Bailey Humphrey. DC, what are your thoughts on Bailey Humphrey? Looked really good in this game, obviously against Melbourne there, but 93 points, playing a bit more mid, and Toot playing a little bit more forward as well. He's up at 528K. Is it just that with Marrick now presenting as an option, obviously Garcia there as well, he's probably behind those two?
Yeah, agreed. He's more expensive than those other two guys, but I think really good draft pick, and still one to keep an eye on, because I think he's got some pedigree about him. But yeah, just probably a little down the order.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, that will wrap us up there. Plenty more questions flying through here, but apologies we couldn't get to all of them. We will be doing, obviously, a Q&A on Tuesday night, so answering plenty more of your questions. Or you can head over to our Patreon to get all your questions answered, exclusive Q&As there. So head to patreon.com/AFL Fantasy Fanatics. You also get the Ask Me On Q service for free as a patron if you become a member, or you can head to askmeonq, spelled QU.com/AFL Fantasy Fanatics to answer all your questions there and get your team reviewed and all stuff like that. So links for those are in the description of the video or the podcast. But thanks for everyone that tuned in live and sent through their questions and players discussed. And DC, what obviously lockout just lifted. It's hard to say what your trades are at this stage, but you might have had to think over the weekend what you might be doing. So what are your early thoughts on what your trades might look like?
Yeah, so I ended up holding Perryman. So that was part of the thing with the Sanders trade because I needed to work out how to get Bailey Smith back in. Flicked him and Hollands last week. So I think still pretty happy with that move, but it does mean that Perryman needs to go this week. So I'll be looking probably to do a defender upgrade. And then I'll be bringing Moraes in the midfield, I would say, at this stage, unless I get a bit fruity, which I tend to do by about Wednesday.
Exactly. But it would not shock me the way that this season's gone for us to trade Perryman out and for him to be back in as a full-time mid. And
I have considered that.
1995.
Yeah. I have wondered, like, what would we need to see in the teams to actually think that maybe he can turn it around? But he's not been good so far, that's for sure.
Yeah. Tim, what are you looking at? Obviously, you're at the Derby, so I don't know exactly how much time you've had a look, but any early thoughts what you might do?
Yeah, so look, I'm kind of playing with that idea of Sanders down to a Marek. And then, like I said, I've got a stack of cash. So I can, I will probably look at taking like a Camperali all the way up to, I don't know, $1 million player. Like I didn't start with Rosie, so I might bring Rosie in. I might look at a Dacos, although I'm a bit scared of his tag in 2 weeks' time. So yeah, I'm going to be looking right at the top end there, looking for someone that's kind of like a top 8 mid, but it's got a little bit of value in it still.
Yeah, I like it. For me, I've got a couple of issues. Obviously, Sam Taylor has to go at some point, but he may stay one more week because I'm probably looking at doing the Sanders down to Marek and going one of Hasty or Camperelli up, whichever one's not named. I think Camperelli comes back in, so it probably will be Hasty to Moraes. And then looking at maybe Taylor the Bison and maybe Wicks up the following week. That's my current early plans looking there. But DC, mate, thank you very much for jumping on. Always a pleasure having you jump on and chat some fantasy with us. Where can the people find you across the socials, and where can people find, if they haven't already, the HatChat podcast?
No worries. Thanks, Bales. Thanks, Guesty. You can find me at DC Caterpillars, and you can find the podcast at HatChat AFL.
Have you started, just quick before we finish up, in your HatChat seed league? Because I have not started well. I'm 0-3 in League 6, and it's not going anywhere near the plan what I thought it would.
I'm 2-1 and went down in a very, very tight game this round, unfortunately. So I think it was about 7 points or something. So yeah, slightly disappointing, but no undefeated teams in League 1, so it's very, very competitive.
Yeah, I did say that I'd see in 5 years, but might more be like 10 the way that this season's going. So who knows? But we'll see. Tim, obviously, thanks for jumping on once again, mate. Where can the people find you, and where can people once again find the stuff that you're offering at Infinite Wealth to fantasy coaches?
Tim Guest AU on all the socials, and infinitewealth.com.au/AFL Fantasy. And just before we go, just a quick shout out to Louis, who's sitting overall at 279 right now. So he's flying.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, right. Shout out to Lou. I'm sure we'll have him on at some point throughout the season as well. So, yeah, it'd be good to chat to him. But congrats to Louis there on a great start to the season. You can find me at BAILSDT, and you can find us at AFL Fantasy Fans on Twitter. As I said, I'll be doing the Patreon Q&A tomorrow night for all the Patrons there. And we'll be doing our Q&A live stream on Tuesday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 Perth time, and answering a heap of your questions there as well. If you did like the video, make sure you smash a like on the video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you're listening back on the pod, please leave us a 5-star rating and review. That'll be very much appreciated. And as I said, we'll be back with you guys on Tuesday night answering all your questions. Good luck, guys, this week, and catch you guys in the next one. So thanks, everyone. See ya.
See ya.